Module 3, we're going to now focus on period of lifespan, most specifically focusing on the infant, and then exploring kind of how the self evolves and really starts out. So let's go ahead and look at the infant here. And so with the infant, the first really ability to differentiate the self from the world, okay, becomes more apparent really in the first 2 to 3 months of life as the infants discover that they can make things happen. So, for instance, you might put a little mobile string on their foot, and they discover when they kick their foot that it rings a bell up atop. And they understand after a while that if I kick my leg, I can control the sound of the bell. So that means I impact the world. So for the first 6 months, really, what's going on is that infants are discovering properties of their physical selves and distinguish between the self and the rest of the world. Okay? And they appreciate that they can act upon other people and objects. And so this is amazing types of discoveries that they are making during this phase. I don't even know what that feels like, but the closest I've ever thought is if you've ever fallen asleep on your arm and it just kind of goes dead and you wake up and it just kind of flops around. And then eventually the feeling comes back. You're like, oh, I can control it again. I think that must be what the baby feels at some point with all of these appendages and where they stop and where the world begins. So the other thing in kind of the realization of the self is the mirror test, or the rouge test is one of the classic ones to see if they understand that they are looking at themselves. And you do that by looking at the mirror. And what they did in these researchers is they took a little bit of makeup like rouge or even a lipstick, and they put it a little bit on the nose of the baby or the infant, and then they would put them in front of a mirror. And you can tell whether they recognize it's themselves or others, because if they think it's another baby, they'll reach out to the baby to like wipe at the nose or swipe at it. If they start reaching at their own nose because there's a color there that they don't know about, then you know that they recognize themselves in the mirror and they have a formation of the self, which I always thought was a pretty brilliant experiment to go ahead and show that awareness of the self. Just a fascinating kind of concept, about putting yourself in a physical space and then surrounding it by reality. That's quite a skill to kind of pick up. Okay. At 6 to 12, or around 9 months of age, so this is between the 6 to 12 month kind of period, infants and a lot of their companions now are separate beings that have different perspectives and perspectives that can be shared. Okay, so you realize that the way you're seeing the world is not the way that everybody else sees the world. And you're seeing that in that 6 to 12 month time period. Now, they don't fully appreciate by any means what the other people are seeing. There's going to be some confusion, but they have some initial understanding. And the fact that you can share a perspective, and that's where joint attention comes in. And we talked a little bit about joint attention when we were discussing language and language development. Once again, my classic example of kind of chair. Oh, you're looking at the chair too? Oh, that's right, that's chair. And the baby's looking at you and you're looking at the baby, and then they're both looking at an object. You are sharing a perspective there. That's what we mean by joint attention. And that really allows you to have some bonding, of course, great for language development. And it also is a sign of a sense of self as far as the child. Not an adult sense of self, but still, it shows beginning awareness of this kind of characteristic of awareness and the self. Okay. Now, at 15 to 24 months, what we begin to see is self-recognition. So remember the rouge test I was telling you about? It's around 15 to 24 months where you begin to really see that rouge test pay off, and the baby now no longer will reach out for the infant in the mirror, but rather to my own nose, or recognize about my own self when I see my reflection. And that's a pretty big step, as you might imagine. Okay. So a little bit shorter module on this one, because next we're going to tackle temperament, which you are born with, and it is the building block of personality. So that's going to be in module 4. Go ahead and tune in for that one next.